1 in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys are sexually exploited before the age of 18. So the thing is, those are just the reported cases. Most cases are not reported. So it is widespread. It's a silent epidemic, and there's so much shame that children feel that they don't report.
Every 10 seconds, a child is abused, physically, mentally, sexually, emotionally, or neglect. It's rampant, but it's kept quiet. You know, the ones that get reported are the ones very often that make the news.
And the thing is, it's not reported because 90% of the time a child is harmed is by someone they know. And 68% of the time it's a family member. Imagine a child telling on a parent, telling on a cousin, telling on an uncle. It's just so much for them to bear.
One predator can molest 150 boys before being caught and convicted. So one person can do a tremendous amount of damage.
Yeah, every child is vulnerable. There are definitely characteristics that make children more vulnerable, but every child is vulnerable. And the thing that we want to get across to parents is we want your children, God forbid it happened to them, to be able to report it right away, to stop it right away, so it doesn't become a huge problem in their life.
There are definitely pedophiles and predators out there that will not sexually abuse their own children, but will sexually abuse their friends and their nieces and their nephews.
I actually feel that it is just this cycle that doesn't stop because it's been silent. And I have to say, you know, Oprah Winfrey was really one of the biggest advocates and people that came forward about her own abuse that really opened the door for people talking about it. And so now people are coming forward more and we're seeing more cases of it, but it's been going on forever. Right. Forever it's been going on.
And it's very cyclical. So if it's in the family, it will probably continue in the family until that silence is broken. So we're hoping that by having a group of parents in a room and now breaking that code of silence and just talking about the issues, people, their awareness will simply be raised, and then they'll be standing on that bus stop and they'll say to themselves, you know, that person, it's just not, it's making me uncomfortable. I'm just gonna be a little bit more vigilant. Something's up. Listening to their intuition. It's all about everyone, including the children, listening to their intuition. Because we know, there's that gut feeling.
It's so widespread, it's so huge, and that is why people need to understand. That's why we're trying to break the cycle of silence, because if we can break this cycle, if people can talk about it and not be scared to talk about, to recognize this is a real problem, because our children are going to school, they're not doing well in school when they're being abused, when they have this on their head. And they're not being given their full potential of what they can be. And it is so widespread, and the fact is, it's wonderful that we teach fire safety, and it's important. But the amount of times there is a fire in a school is so small. But every 10 seconds, a child is abused. We need to teach our children prevention education to prevent that.
30 to 50% of predators in today's world are now teenagers.
It's not now, they've always been, but the research is now coming out that children don't just become adults at 21 and start offending. They have been doing it since they were in their teens. But there was a tendency in the past to just kind of sweep it under the rug, or their kids.
They're exploring, they're just learning and whatnot. But now with the onset, we feel at KidSafe, that with the onset of the internet and the availability of pornography and child pornography and a lot of images that children are seeing at a very, very young age and unable to digest and very often unsupervised, if you already have a vulnerable, traumatized teenager and they're seeing all of these images, in the past maybe they wouldn't have acted out on things, but now they're more apt to act out and then therefore start abusing children.
And they're also becoming desensitized to what's appropriate and what's not, because they're seeing so many different things, like fetishes in children have gone up dramatically because they're now exposed to things that we were never exposed to when we were younger.
It affects from the youngest all the way into the court system. So if we can prevent it, we're helping society and are affecting our taxes for that matter. But millions and billions of dollars go into now taking an abused child, getting them the help that they need if they even get into the system, or if they don't get into the system, they might end up being juvenile delinquents. They might end up going, because you get so affected mentally from sexual abuse, that it drives them into a direction of poor self-esteem, perhaps not reaching the potential that they could have reached, and perhaps ending up into the court system and ending up in jail because now they've become abusers or they've just chosen bad paths for themselves. One of Oprah's predators that she interviewed said a quote that was astounding. He abused, I think it was a cousin or a family member, a girl, and he said, "I killed the person that she could have been." And that was very powerful because that's what happens to children who are sexually abused. They become somebody else because of the abuse. Now, doesn't mean that they become a bad person, don't get me wrong on that. It was not the path that maybe that they were destined for. And it can change, it will change their lives.
We as people always are suppressing our instincts for things. We want to believe the good in everybody. We want to believe something like this could never happen. And the fact is, it does happen, and we need to trust our instincts about it, and we need to be really, all the time, the protection of the child has to be first and foremost.
A lot of parents wouldn't know how to recognize if their child was disclosing a problem. Children don't come up and say, "Oh, Mom, I need to talk to you about it. I'm being bullied on the bus stop, blah, blah, blah." We wish it was that direct. Very often it's through their actions or through their responses or a change of mood or behaviors, grades slipping. It's things that they're responding to, but not in a way that's direct. So I'll give you an example. A woman came to one of our seminars for adults, sat through the seminar, and called us up about 2 months later literally at 10:30 at night and was distraught. Her daughter, who was only 4 years old, was playing with the doll during the day and was doing inappropriate things with the doll. And she said to me that had she not been through that seminar months before, she wouldn't have understood or recognized what the daughter was doing with the dolls. So she used the skills that we taught her. She kept her poker face. She didn't respond in an emotional way, which would have shut down communication. And she asked the daughter, "Oh, what are you doing, honey?" While her stomach, her throat, her heart was in her stomach. And the child said, "Oh, I'm playing with the dolls." "Oh, what are you playing?" "I'm playing what Mr. Bob does at daycare." "Oh, what does Mr. Bob do?" And she is literally sweating. And she's trying to figure out what's going on. And lo and behold, her child's being molested at her daycare. And this is how that child disclosed, through play. So we need to educate ourselves and be aware. How do we see these things? Even if we don't want to see them. Sometimes people say, how could that have gone on for 7 years in someone's house and not be seen?
I think I always say in the beginning of my lectures is that if I do my job here tonight and I scare you, but then I teach you things and I empower you, please go tell 5 people what you learned tonight and keep the conversation going. Empower yourself to be your child's first line of protection and their safety.
A lot of the parents, we sometimes say we're preaching to the choir kind of thing. A lot of the parents do, shall we say, have their heads in the sand, and they often say, "It could never happen to my child. I know all of our relatives. I trust our tennis coach, whoever it is, could never happen to my child." What we're trying to do is to explain to everybody, I don't care where you're coming from, it can happen to any child. And that's why we as adults have to become aware and educated and learn skills ourselves so that we can communicate with our children about it.
There's definitely a fear of, teaching children something that maybe they're not old enough to know. But we are trying to teach through KidSafe that this should be a very natural part of your everyday parenting. That if you're not teaching your children these things, there are other people out there, like predators, who are ready, willing, and very happy to teach your children about these things that you might be too scared to talk to your children about. You should be scared not to talk to your children about it.